Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the interweb. My name is Dark, and thank you for joining me. Today, I'm going to try doing something new and review certain games I finished within recent times. Today, I'll specifically be talking about Mafia 3. Now, I've played the prequel, Mafia 2, a few years back, and I was rather pleased with this game. However, it kind of felt like a Grand Theft Auto game, just changed around a bit and with limited free roaming. Now, as I started playing Mafia 3, I quickly noticed several differences from the last of its series. I was rather surprised and I felt a bit of pride as it felt like the Mafia series finally found its own unique gaming system. Waiting for comments, tell me the system is a copy of another game. Anyway, the initial story setting's pretty straightforward. You start playing as Lincoln Clay, a black Vietnam vet recently discharged and back in his home of New Verdun. The year is 1968, and if you know anything about history, being a colored person, or overall just not a white person, especially in the South, as the setting of this game is in the state of Louisiana, is really, really hard, to put it lightly. You'll see this constantly throughout the game, especially near the end as racist white men casually spout the N-word like people say the word fuck nowadays. Your first moments in the game, you're as Lincoln, going with your friend Georgie, getting ready to rob the Federal Reserve. After you play a few objectives relating to this, you go back about a week in time, and you see how things develop from there. Now, constantly throughout the game, you'll experience certain cutscenes from various characters you'll interact with, clearly about 20 or more years after the events you're currently playing in. These interviews are hosted by an unknown source, but it's quickly clear that they're doing a documentary about the very man you play as. Now, these cutscenes will tell you certain things that are going to happen, like so-and-so died, or, Lincoln blew up this building, or whatever. All the while, you kind of get an idea in your head, like, is Lincoln Clay dead at this time? Or did he become some big shot mobster, or some other third thing? The answer's revealed in time. Back to the story. Lincoln comes home. He's quickly greeted by his brother and close friend Ellis. Later, he attends a party where you meet Father James, a fellow veteran who raised Lincoln for most of his life, and the man whom Lincoln considers his father, Sammy Robinson, leader of the Black Mafia. Also, this is the moment where you see one of my favorite one-liners by Ellis. Now, Sammy comes off as more of like a father figure than a mobster, at least in my eyes. It hints that he's kind of tired of the game and of being pushed around. Now, my impression of the guy is he's kind of like the Black Godfather, only he's like the subordinate of the real Godfather, or, some equivalent. Now, Father James is one of those you like him or you don't type of characters. Many kind of see him as an annoyance, I'm sure, like most religious characters. Now, soon after the party, Lincoln learns of Sammy's Haitian problem and quickly sets about to solve it by allegedly killing half their numbers. After that fun experience, Lincoln is introduced to Georgie's father, Sal Marcano. Sal asks if Lincoln will take over the Black Mob when Sammy retires, or is forcibly retired, as it is hinted at. Lincoln declines. Now, despite this, Lincoln, Georgie, Ellis, and the easily forgettable Danny Burke go off to rob the Federal Reserve, as this will pretty much benefit everyone involved in the heist. Now, there are moments in this heist and the escape that will definitely make you excited, and others that will probably frustrate you, like me driving the boat to escape from the cops. It took me a few tries to get used to driving a boat. Anyway, after you escape the cops and, singing a few parody lines for I Fought the Law, everything seems to go great for Sammy's family. That is, until Sal and Georgie kill all of Clay's present friends and family in a fast act of betrayal, shooting Lincoln in the head and burning down the bar that Lincoln uses as his home. Now, by an act of divine intervention, or, dumb luck, Father James saves Lincoln and takes him to his home to recover. Lincoln asks James to call his former CO and war buddy, John Donovan, whom will quickly become your favorite character in the entire game, if not this entire series. With the help of a CIA operative who is more than willing to help you bury everyone related to the Marcano family, the two set off to make Sal's hopes and dreams slowly die before his very eyes. Now, for the next few set of missions, you'll recruit various allies who have one thing or another against Sal Marcano. These allies include the revolutionary Haitian Cassandra, typical bad dad Irishman Thomas Broke, and everyone's favorite Italian mobster Vito Scaletta. You know, the main character from the last game? Personally, I was actually really surprised by this. Together, these five deliver righteous retribution against the Italian mob run by the Marcanos. I say five, but really it's Lincoln Clay going one-man army and everyone else playing support. Mafia III has this rather interesting system. Territorial assignment, which, as the name suggests, you give territory to one of your three underbosses. How this works is once you take a section of New Bourdon, you have the choice to assign that piece to one of your three associates. Now, you kind of need to be careful if you aren't playing favorites, or even if you are, because ignoring even one of your partners could get them to betray you. Unless you don't like one or two of them, then go ahead and give everything to Vito. I know many people do that. Now, personally, I like Cassandra the least, but I felt it was fair to divide the city evenly between all three of them, especially since Cassandra is the one in charge of the guy with the mobile armory. That said, you get money from each of these people, too, and you get different bonuses and services through each of these allies, and the more territory you give one of these individuals, the more stuff you get in return. So it kind of was like a no-brainer, makes sense type of thing for me. Once you hand out territory to one of your underbosses, you unlock two different types of missions. One that increases the money produced by the rackets, which in turn give you more money for kickback, and another one which increases loyalty with your underbosses, and you get to find out a little more about their backstory. Or in Vito's case, what the hell happened to his friend Joe. Cutting a bloody path through this city, you have various guns and equipment that will aid you in killing mobsters, rednecks, and various other enemies, including my favorite silent machine gun.
Oh, come on now, Snowflake. Where you think you're going?
Oh, fuck you!
Trouble on the way. Goddamn.
He's taking us down!
Consider it done.
Falling hard and fast! Try doing that to...
Damn, I love that thing. The combat system is pretty straightforward. Typical aim and shoot, throw grenades and the like. Avoid getting shot, laughing as the enemy curses you out, all that good stuff. I have no complaints with this system, nor about the game, how it feels overall. Just nothing really sticks out with me when it comes to game mechanics in particular. Now, there are many things I like about this game, but the one thing that kind of bugs the shit out of me is when you're driving around in a car and then you crash with body armor on. The body armor takes the hit. Like, is bulletproof vest more effective at protecting me than my seatbelt? Game logic. Anyway. Now, this next part I'm going to talk about is a little bit heavy, so if you want to skip that, I perfectly understand. I'll leave a time link below for those of you who want to skip. There are two talk shows that you'll hear, assuming if you put the radio on while you're driving, that really left an impression on me. The shows I'm talking about would be Native Son and The Hollow Speaks. The forward is run by a typical southern, privileged, racist white man known as Remy Duvall. He's the kind of guy who makes you think he's a nice person, but he really belittles black people and other people who aren't white if you really pay attention to what he's saying. Talking about certain events that you may or may not have performed directly as Lincoln Clay are topics that have very much been discussed during the time. For example, hippies, black power, how young people are protesting the war in Vietnam, so on and so forth. Now, I feel that this show accurately shows the mindset of many Southern people during the late 1960s. So much that it actually encourages me to invent a time machine, get a few of my friends together, and kill as many of these people as we can find. Maybe even save Martin Luther King while we're at it. Now, the other talk show is by a middle-aged black man, at least I assume he's middle-aged, known as Charles. I'm not even going to begin to pronounce his last name. I'm just going to spell it out for you right there in the little title thing. Now, this guy refers to himself as the Voice. You have the pleasure of meeting this guy pretty early on in the game. Even learn that he's an old friend and former bartender for Sammy. Now, Charles goes on to talk about various topics, some of which that are still being discussed this very day, like legalizing marijuana, how most black people are treated in this country, bashing Remy Duvall, and even celebrating Lincoln Clay's actions in changing the city. Now, the Voice, as he prefers to be called, preaches often how his brothers and sisters should rise up against the white man, saying several times over and over again how violence is the only way to truly change things. Hearing these broadcasts give me a fair idea of how hard life was back then for any non-white person in the South, and it really paints a picture of just how sick many of these people were for their mistreatment. It really made me sympathize with what this man was saying. Charles always ends his shows with, "When the holla speaks, you better listen," or some variation of that. However, the last two broadcasts of The Voice really stuck with me. The first one is The Voice explaining how he knows Clay, the colored killer cleansing the evil that is allowed to remain, saying how Clay isn't the cold-cutting killer that the news is portraying him to be. That he, and I mean Charles, is a believer in the cleansing power of violence, and how Lincoln is like a farmer clearing the field for the rest of us to sow. Now this ends with a rather different closing liner, and I quote, "This is the hollow speaking, son, but now the hollow listens to you." That speech made me feel a lot of mixed emotions. Now, it felt good that there are those that support you ridding the city of scum by becoming the necessary evil for the greater good, but at the same time it shows how desperate the times were, that there are those who would openly support a cleansing of this caliber. It made me sad that at one point, this country was very much like it was portrayed in Mafia III. Now, his last broadcast was a message to the up-and-coming generation about how the old tried to change this world, well, some more than others, and how this country became a lot better than what it was. He goes on to saying how politicians don't solve problems unless they fear the people rising up. Now that statement pretty much rings true even in this day and age. And then he goes on saying how we are worse than anyone else on this planet, on how we spend too much time judging on other people's skin color, beliefs, and so on. Roughly at this point you hear someone banging on the door to his studio. Charles goes on saying that you should be proud of who you are, to own up to your mistakes and not be afraid to get bloodied to fight for what you believe in. Now it ends with whomever was making that noise, most likely members of the cops, breaking into the garage Charles was using as a studio and assumingly arresting him. Honestly though, I thought I was going to hear a gunshot during that ending. These two talk shows, two halves of the same coin, really give us insight of those times, of the mindset of two groups of people, the oppressors and the oppressed. Now this is one of the true hidden gems within this game. It really echoes into your soul. Now, there will be various other moments that will certainly have you thinking long back after you finish or you're currently playing through the game. Moments like this guy humping a barrel, executing members of the Southern Union, which are really the Ku Klux Klan. That time where everyone gets trippy as fuck because you slipped military-grade drugs into their drinks, punching racist Southern white folks in the face. What happens when you leave a truck alone for 5 minutes? Looking at this city from the highest point you can find, admiring the various arts you'll find throughout the city, finding out what the cops really do in their free time, and, of course, walking through the aftermath of grenading the fuck out of a Ku Klux Klan meeting. Yep, especially that one. At the end of it all, you get to kill Sal at the top of his half-finished casino he wanted to complete so badly so he could get out of organized crime. Now, there are several ways you can kill him, or even let the guy shoot himself too if you really want to. I'll link a video below of this one player's experiment of the various methods you can use. Personally, my favorite is this one.
What are you waiting for? You.
That, ladies and gents, is the clay kick. Now from there, you meet up with Father James and Donovan one last time to talk about what will happen now. You will have 3 choices on how you want the story to end. Now, it's possible to see all 3 endings if you're curious. You just can't choose the one that I went with first. No, I'm not telling you. Now, no matter what choice you make, you get to see the greatest ending ever involving Donovan at the end of the credits. Now, if you didn't like this guy up to this point, you sure as hell should like him after seeing that ending. Overall, I give Mafia 3 an 8.8 out of 10. So what do you guys think of all this, especially considering this is my first gaming review? Now, for those of you who've played, what are your favorite moments on Mafia 3? Leave a comment below and bring this discussion to a head.